Have you ever wondered what it would be like to stand before the most powerful rulers on earth, knowing that your next words could mean the difference between life and death? What if I told you that one man's unwavering faith not only saved his life countless times but actually changed the course of history itself? Today, we're going to explore the incredible journey of a young man who refused to compromise his beliefs, even when facing the most terrifying trials imaginable. Picture this. A teenager torn from everything he knows, forced to march hundreds of miles across scorching desert to serve in the palace of his enemies. Yet somehow, this same young man would rise to become one of the most influential figures in the ancient world. His name was Daniel, and his story is about to blow your mind. Our story begins in a time of great darkness for the people of Judah. The year was around 605 BC, and the mighty Babylonian army, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, had surrounded the holy city of Jerusalem. The sound of war drums echoed through the streets as families huddled in their homes, knowing that their world was about to change forever. When Jerusalem finally fell, it wasn't just buildings that were destroyed or treasures that were taken. The Babylonians had a clever strategy for dealing with conquered peoples. They would take the brightest and most promising young people from noble families and bring them to Babylon. The plan was simple but effective. Turn these young leaders into loyal servants of the Babylonian Empire. Among the captives was a young man named Daniel. Can you imagine the fear and uncertainty he must have felt as he was torn away from his family, his home, and everything familiar? The journey to Babylon was long and dangerous, stretching across hundreds of miles of desert. But there was something different about Daniel, something that would soon become apparent to everyone around him. When Daniel and his fellow captives finally arrived in Babylon, they were amazed by what they saw. The city was magnificent, with towering walls and hanging gardens that seemed to touch the sky. But this beauty came with a price. King Nebuchadnezzar had a plan for these young Jewish men, and it involved erasing their identity completely. Nebuchadnezzar ordered his chief official, Ashpenaz, to select only the best of the Jewish captives. They had to be young men without any physical defects, handsome, intelligent, and quick to learn. These chosen few would receive the finest education in Babylonian culture, language, and customs. For 3 years, they would be trained to serve in the king's palace. As part of this training, the young men were given new Babylonian names. Daniel became Belteshazzar, and his 3 friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were renamed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But changing names was just the beginning. The real test came with the daily meals. Every day, these young men were offered the finest food and wine from the king's own table. To most people, this would have seemed like an incredible honor. But Daniel saw something different. He understood that eating this food would violate the dietary laws that God had given to the Jewish people. It would be the first step in abandoning his faith. Now, Daniel could have easily justified eating the food. After all, he was a prisoner in a foreign land. Who could blame him for just trying to survive? But Daniel made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He chose to honor God, no matter what the cost. Approaching the chief official with great respect, Daniel asked permission to avoid eating the king's food and wine. The official was sympathetic but scared. What if these Jewish young men looked weaker or less healthy than the others? The king might blame him, and that could mean death. Daniel, however, had a bold proposal. He suggested a simple test. For 10 days, he and his friends would eat only vegetables and drink only water. After that, their appearance could be compared to the other young men who ate the king's food. This was a moment of incredible faith. Daniel was literally putting his life on the line for his belief. If the test failed, it wouldn't just mean trouble for him, it could mean death for the official who allowed it. But something amazing happened. After 10 days, Daniel and his friends looked healthier and stronger than all the other young men. This wasn't just good luck, it was a miracle. God was showing that He would take care of those who remained faithful to Him. The success of this test was just the beginning. Over the following years, God blessed Daniel and his friends with exceptional wisdom and intelligence. They mastered everything they were taught about Babylonian culture and science. But Daniel received something extra special, the ability to understand and interpret dreams and visions. When the time came for King Nebuchadnezzar to evaluate all the young men, Daniel and his friends stood out remarkably. The king was so impressed that he found them 10 times wiser than all the magicians and wise men in his entire kingdom. These young men who had started as prisoners were now among the most trusted advisors in the empire. But Daniel's greatest test was yet to come. One night, King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that troubled him deeply. He woke up agitated, knowing the dream was important but unable to remember what it was about. So he called for all his wise men, the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers. Then the king made an incredible demand. He didn't just want them to interpret his dream. He wanted them to tell him what the dream was in the first place. If they couldn't do both, he would have them all cut into pieces and their houses destroyed. The wise men were horrified. They protested that no one on earth could do such a thing. But Nebuchadnezzar was furious. He ordered that all the wise men in Babylon be executed, and that included Daniel and his friends. When Daniel heard about the king's order, he didn't panic. Instead, he asked for time and promised to interpret the king's dream. Then he did something that shows us everything about his character. He gathered his 3 friends, and together they prayed. They didn't just pray casually. They prayed with everything they had, knowing that their lives and the lives of all the wise men in Babylon depended on God's answer. And God answered. That night, in a vision, God revealed both the dream and its meaning to Daniel. The next morning, Daniel stood before the most powerful man in the world, ready to reveal what God had shown him. He began by making it clear that the revelation came not from his own wisdom, but from God in heaven. Daniel then described the king's dream in perfect detail. Nebuchadnezzar had seen a massive statue with a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs of iron, and feet of mixed iron and clay. A stone, not cut by human hands, had struck the statue's feet, causing the entire structure to crumble. The stone then became a great mountain that filled the whole earth. King Nebuchadnezzar was amazed. Not only had Daniel accurately described the dream, but he also provided its interpretation. The statue represented a succession of world empires. Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian Empire was the head of gold. After him would come other kingdoms, each represented by different metals. The stone that destroyed the statue represented God's eternal kingdom, which would never be destroyed. The king was so impressed that he actually fell down and worshipped Daniel, acknowledging the power of Daniel's God. As a reward, Daniel was promoted to governor of the entire province of Babylon and made chief of all the wise men. True to his character, Daniel didn't forget his friends and requested that they also be given high positions. King Nebuchadnezzar, perhaps inspired by the dream of the statue, decided to build a massive golden image. He then issued a decree that everyone in the empire must bow down and worship this statue when they heard the sound of musical instruments. Anyone who refused would be thrown into a blazing furnace. Daniel's 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, faced an impossible choice. They could bow down to the statue and betray their faith, or they could refuse and face certain death. Their response was both courageous and inspiring. When brought before the angry king, they said something that has echoed through history. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us. But even if he doesn't, we want you to know that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold. Nebuchadnezzar was so furious that he ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual. The 3 young men were tied up and thrown into the flames. The fire was so intense that it actually killed the soldiers who threw them in. But then something incredible happened. The king, looking into the furnace, saw not 3 men but 4, walking around in the flames completely unharmed. The 4th figure, he said, looked like a son of the gods. When Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the furnace, Not a hair on their heads was singed, their clothes weren't burned, and they didn't even smell like smoke. This miracle was so obvious that even the pagan king had to acknowledge the power of their God. Years passed, and Daniel continued to serve faithfully in the Babylonian court. Then King Nebuchadnezzar had another disturbing dream. This time he remembered it, but none of his wise men could interpret it. So he called for Daniel. The king described a vision of a huge tree that grew so tall it could be seen from everywhere on earth. Its fruit fed all the animals, and birds nested in its branches. But then a heavenly messenger ordered that the tree be cut down, leaving only the stump and roots. Daniel understood the dream immediately, but he was troubled by its meaning. The tree represented King Nebuchadnezzar himself. Just as the tree was great and provided for many, so was the king's empire. But the cutting down of the tree meant that the king would lose his throne and his sanity, living like an animal for 7 years until he acknowledged that God is supreme over all kingdoms. Daniel compassionately advised the king to change his ways, to practice righteousness and show mercy to the poor. But Nebuchadnezzar didn't listen. A year later, while walking on his palace roof and boasting about his power and achievements, the prophecy was fulfilled. The king lost his mind and was driven from his palace. For 7 years, he lived like an animal, eating grass and living outdoors until his hair grew like feathers and his nails like claws. At the end of this period, Nebuchadnezzar's sanity returned. He looked up to heaven, praised God, and acknowledged his eternal dominion. The king was restored to his throne with even greater honor than before. Time passed, and political changes swept through the empire. Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's son, now ruled Babylon. Unlike his father, who had learned to respect Daniel's God, Belshazzar was arrogant and disrespectful. During a great feast, Belshazzar made a terrible mistake. Drunk with wine and pride, he ordered that the gold and silver cups taken from the temple in Jerusalem be brought out. He and his guests drank from these sacred vessels while praising their pagan gods. Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared and began writing on the wall of the palace. The king was terrified. His face turned pale, his knees shook, and he could barely stand. None of the wise men could read the writing, so the queen suggested calling Daniel. When Daniel arrived, the king offered him great rewards if he could interpret the message. Daniel refused the gifts but agreed to explain the writing. Before revealing the meaning, Daniel reminded Belshazzar of the lesson his father had learned about humility and acknowledging God's power. He criticized the king for not learning from Nebuchadnezzar's experience and for insulting God by using the sacred temple vessels. The writing on the wall said, "Mean, tekel, parson." Daniel interpreted it as God's judgment on Belshazzar's kingdom. The king had been weighed and found wanting. His kingdom would be divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That very night, the prophecy came true. Belshazzar was killed, and Darius the Mede took control of Babylon. Under the new government, Daniel once again proved his worth. King Darius recognized Daniel's exceptional abilities and planned to put him in charge of the entire kingdom. But this promotion created jealousy among the other officials. These men tried desperately to find fault with Daniel's work, but they couldn't. His integrity was perfect. Finally, they realized that the only way to attack Daniel was through his religion. They convinced King Darius to issue a decree that for 30 days, no one could pray to any god or person except the king. Anyone who disobeyed would be thrown into a den of lions. When Daniel heard about this law, he didn't change his routine at all. 3 times a day, he continued to kneel by his window, which faced Jerusalem, and pray to God just as he had always done. The conspirators found Daniel praying and reported him to the king. Darius was heartbroken. He had been tricked into signing a law that would kill his most trusted advisor. He tried all day to find a way to save Daniel, but the law of the Medes and Persians could not be changed. With great sadness, the king ordered Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den. Before this happened, Darius said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." After Daniel was thrown into the den, a stone was placed over the opening and sealed with the king's ring. Daniel was trapped with hungry lions, facing what seemed like certain death. But while King Darius spent the night pacing his palace, unable to eat or sleep, Daniel experienced something completely different. God sent an angel to shut the lion's mouth. The beasts that should have torn Daniel apart instead lay peacefully around him. At the first light of dawn, the worried king rushed to the lion's den. In an anxious voice, he called out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God been able to rescue you from the lions?" To the king's amazement and joy, Daniel's voice came from the den. "O king, live forever! My God sent his angel and shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in God's sight." When Daniel was lifted from the den, there wasn't a scratch on him. The king was overjoyed. He immediately ordered that the men who had plotted against Daniel be thrown into the same den, along with their families. Before they even reached the bottom, the lions overpowered them. King Darius then issued a decree to his entire empire, ordering all people to fear and reverence the God of Daniel. He proclaimed that Daniel's God was the living God whose kingdom would never be destroyed. Daniel's story didn't end with his rescue from the lion's den. He continued to serve faithfully and received many prophetic visions about the future. These prophecies, recorded in the later chapters of the book of Daniel, have provided hope and guidance to people for thousands of years. Daniel's life teaches us incredible lessons about faith, integrity, and courage. He showed that it's possible to remain faithful to God even in the most difficult circumstances. Whether facing dietary restrictions, death threats, or a den of lions, Daniel never compromised his beliefs. His influence extended far beyond his own lifetime. The kings he served came to acknowledge the power of his God. His prophecies provided hope for the Jewish people during their exile and beyond. Even Jesus referred to Daniel as a prophet, and the book of Revelation contains many references to Daniel's visions. Daniel's story reminds us that true greatness doesn't come from power or position, but from unwavering faith and unshakable character. He started as a teenage captive but became one of the most influential men in the ancient world, all because he chose to trust God completely. In our own lives, we may not face lions or fiery furnaces, but we all encounter situations where we must choose between doing what's easy and doing what's right. Daniel's example shows us that when we remain faithful to God, He will be faithful to us, even when the circumstances seem impossible. The story of Daniel is more than just ancient history, it's a powerful reminder that faith can move mountains and change the course of empires. From a young man who refused to compromise his beliefs about food to an elderly prophet who faced death rather than stop praying, Daniel's life demonstrates the incredible power of unwavering faith. His journey from captive to counselor of kings shows us that God can use anyone who remains faithful to Him, regardless of their circumstances. Whether we're facing small daily challenges or life-threatening situations, Daniel's example encourages us to trust in God's faithfulness and never compromise our integrity. If this incredible story has inspired you, touched your heart, or given you hope for your own challenges, I'd love to hear from you. Please hit that like button if you enjoyed this journey through Daniel's amazing life.